Revealed, the incredible truth behind America's most heart-wrenching prison. 3 lives transformed. In a small Midwest town, the air is thick with an unsettling silence. Once filled with the persistent hum of factory machines, the streets now echo with the despair of disillusioned dreams. Brian, a 38-year-old single father, feels the crushing weight of responsibility drag him into the depths of uncertainty each day. With every rejection letter he receives, the glimmers of hope that once lit his path grow dimmer. He stretches every penny, tries to keep his 2 kids afloat, yet the mounting bills feel more like anchors than obstacles. He wonders how long he can keep this facade while his son and daughter look up to him with innocent eyes, believing their world won't collapse. Meanwhile, in the same town lives Sarah, a 22-year-old woman caught in a tug-of-war between her dreams and the suffocating expectations of her immigrant family. As she stands in the shadow of her father's proud smile, clutching an Ivy League acceptance letter that could change everything, doubt seeps into her heart. Each decision looms large, and the unspoken pressures weigh down her spirit like a boulder. How can she pursue a law degree, hoping to make a difference for those struggling, when it could mean leaving her family behind? The conflict gnashes at her soul, blurring the lines between love and obligation. Then there's Mike, a 40-year-old decorated veteran who once faced battle with unwavering courage. Now, he's trapped in a different kind of fight against the demons of post-traumatic stress disorder. Each memory haunts him, turning mundane moments into nightmares. Seeking solace in a bottle, he finds himself spiraling into despair and ultimately makes a regrettable choice. The shame gnaws at him, leading him to question if redemption is ever meant for someone like him. Their lives intersect in the wake of a shocking crime, a robbery gone sideways that leaves a local shopkeeper fighting for his life. Each character finds themselves swept up in the chaos of events beyond their control. Brian's desperation grows. Tempted to resort to theft as a means to secure a future for his kids, he faces the fight between maintaining his integrity and sound judgment. Sarah, forced to confront the implications of her choices, wonders if her dream of making a difference in the world coincides with abandoning her family. And Mike, grappling with internal anguish, realizes he has the chance to step back into the light or allow the darkness to consume him completely. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In those tense moments, their fates intertwine, creating a unique fellowship molded from desperation and a shared understanding of struggle. Each character begins to unveil long-buried truths about their lives, revealing a complexity they've hidden for too long. Brian grapples with the fundamental question: can he provide for his children without sacrificing his values? Sarah's heart races as she stands in front of a crossroads, considering whether to pursue her dreams or stay rooted in familial obligations. And Mike, facing the prospect of community rejection, searches for the strength needed to reclaim his dignity among those he feels have abandoned him. As they tread deeper into uncharted waters, one striking question gnaws at their consciousness: is true redemption possible in a world that seems to have forsaken them? The buzzing of the morning sun crept through Brian's worn-out curtains, casting a dim, golden light across the cluttered living room. Today felt heavier than the others. He walked into the kitchen, where the cereal box sat almost empty. His stomach twisted in knots as he poured the last of it into 2 bowls, trying to mask his unease with a smile. His kids shuffled in, still yawning, and he ruffled their hair, hoping today would be different. "Good morning, Dad," Emma chirped, her enthusiasm washing over him like a soothing balm. But the fleeting joy was quickly overshadowed by the growing stack of unpaid bills nestled on the counter. He plastered on a smile, but the weight of his worries pressed down hard. Could today be the day he finally found a job that paid enough? Or was this just another cruel reminder of how far he had fallen? Meanwhile, across town, Sarah stared at the Ivy League acceptance letter spread out before her. Her heart fluttered with excitement and dread. This was her chance to break free, yet the emotional tug-of-war felt relentless. Imagining her father's disappointment made her stomach churn. Could she truly leave her family behind to chase a dream that felt destined to be only hers? The thought of her father's proud smile faded as doubt clouded her vision. Just down the road, Mike sat clutching a bottle of whiskey, staring out at the neighborhood he once protected. The memories flooded in like a crashing wave, dragging him beneath the surface. He recalled the laughter, the camaraderie of fellow soldiers, and how quickly that had been replaced by isolation. Today marked 5 years since his last combat tour, and the silence of his living room felt like the weight of the world. Between the shame and the nightmares, he fought to hold on to the remnants of hope that felt more elusive each passing day. The town buzzed with whispers about the robbery. News spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of Brian, Sarah, and Mike, drawing them toward the incident in ways they never imagined. It was here that their lives would intersect violently and unexpectedly. Each one found themselves on the brink of decisions that might change their paths forever. "Did you hear about the shopkeeper?" a neighbor asked Brian, the urgency in his voice slicing through Brian's morning fog. "He's in bad shape. They say he fought back hard." Brian's heart skipped a beat. The very thought of theft, a desperate, harrowing act, crawled back into his mind. The image of his children, hungry and confused, pushed him toward a dark corner he had long tried to escape. But this too, he realized, would leave scars far deeper than hunger. Sarah stood at her window, watching the world unfold below. The name of the shopkeeper echoed in her mind. She'd often passed that store, always friendly with him and his family. Could she have made a difference if she had been there? Mike leaned against his counter, eyes closed as he pondered the chaos stirring outside his world, the struggles of ordinary people clashing with desperate measures. In that moment of solitude, a flicker of determination ignited within him. "Enough," he murmured to himself. "It's time to find my purpose again." The three of them, bound by threads of despair, uncertainty, and the quest for redemption, would soon make choices that could either shatter their fragile existence or somehow piece together their broken dreams. Each faced their own demons, but as fate wove their stories together, a daunting realization took hold. Sometimes the darkest paths lead to the brightest destinations. Little did they know that a sudden twist of events was headed their way, one that would force them to confront their most profound fears. Would they rise together, or would they be torn apart by the very circumstances they so desperately sought to escape? The air was thick with tension, unspoken fears swirling around Brian, Sarah, and Mike like storm clouds ready to burst. They were caught in the imploding gravity of their lives, and for each of them, something had to give. The day crept on, the familiar sounds of the neighborhood growing louder, kids laughing, lawnmowers humming, cars sputtering down the street. Yet, none of it resonated. Everything felt muted, as if life was moving on without them. Brian absently made his way to the sofa, heart heavy as he watched his kids playing on the carpet. Emma and Jake giggled, throwing stuffed animals at each other. It warmed him yet pierced his heart at once. The innocence in their laughter clashed sharply with his reality, one he felt he could never share with them. How could he tell them about the intricacies of survival in a world where hope waned with each passing day? "Hey, you two," he called out, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. "Want to help Dad with a little project today? Can we build a fort?" Jake asked, his eyes sparkling. "Yeah. A fort." Emma agreed enthusiastically. A small smile crept onto Brian's face. Maybe today wasn't a complete loss after all. They gathered pillows and blankets, their giggles filling the room, pulling him gradually out of his worries. As chaos quickly turned to cushy comfort, he couldn't shake the thought, if he didn't find work soon, how would he keep this joy alive? At the same time, across town, Sarah clutched her letter. For days, she had weighed her options, standing at the intersection of family loyalty and pursuing her dreams. The thrumming tension in her chest felt agonizingly familiar. She picked up her phone and scrolled through the recent news feed, eyes landing on the story about the robbery. The shopkeeper's family, she knew them. They weren't just a headline, they were faces she saw, people she shared moments with each time she visited. Suddenly, her resolve strengthened. What if this was a call, not just for her, but for her community? She could help. She could make a difference without sacrificing who she was or the people she loved. Instinctively, she grabbed a pen and paper, jotting down ideas for a community fund or a support group to help families affected by unexpected tragedies. This could be part of her legacy, not just chasing her dreams but bringing hope to others, too. Meanwhile, Mike took a deep breath, the fuzziness from the whiskey lingering like a fog around him. The thought of purpose ignited a fire within, so he slipped on his shoes, feeling the ground solid under his feet. He had protected his people, now he would reclaim that responsibility, not as a soldier but as a neighbor, a friend. He pulled a faded baseball cap over his messy hair and stepped out, determined to speak to the men in his old military unit. They needed to reconnect. They could do something, anything. The idea of a community watch formed in his mind, a way to prevent what had happened to the shopkeeper from happening again. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across familiar streets, Brian, Sarah, and Mike were unknowingly aligning themselves toward the same destination. With their hearts tuned to the same frequency of hope and change, they would soon discover how their lives could intertwine in ways none of them anticipated, but what they didn't yet realize was that sometimes, what starts as a glimmer of good intentions can morph into unexpected chaos. As each of their missions unfolded, they would all be tested in ways that would pull them apart and bring them together once again. The looming question remained: in pursuing their own paths, would they lose sight of one another completely? The next morning, hints of sunlight peeked through the curtains as Brian stirred awake. For a moment, he felt buoyed by the memory of laughter from the day before, but it quickly faded, replaced by the weight of uncertainty. He glanced at his kids still asleep on the couch, their bodies curled up in the fort they had so eagerly built. It was a makeshift castle of safety, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within him. Once the kids awoke, Brian knew he had to strike a balance between fun and the reality awaiting him outside their little fortress. As they devoured cereal at the kitchen table, a thought nagged at him. Being a dad felt like a double-edged sword, joy mingled with despair. What kind of father wouldn't he provide stability? Would he have to tell them someday that emotional scars felt like anchors, dragging a joyful spirit down into murky waters? Across town, Sarah finalized her plans. She typed furiously, crafting an email to the local community center. It would be an invitation for a meeting, to share her idea of a fund to help those suffering from the recent wave of burglaries. Her heart raced as she pressed send, daring to believe she could ignite a spark of hope in her neighbors. But doubts crept in like unwelcomed guests. What if no one showed up? What if her efforts fell flat? Mike was never the type to hold back. Reuniting with his military friends meant confronting old ghosts and perhaps healing unseen wounds. They had experienced brotherhood in combat, but civilian life felt different, fragile. As he stood in front of his mirror, he smoothed down the brim of his cap, steeling himself for a reunion laden with unspoken history. How would he even start the conversation about their new mission? How would he mobilize them to leap into action again? When the clock struck noon, Brian sent a text to both Sarah and Mike, suggesting a gathering at the park. The idea of an afternoon together felt grounding yet uncertain, like walking on a tightrope without a safety net. They needed each other now more than ever. As he hit send, he hoped they would come. The air buzzed with anticipation as Sarah checked her phone. A mix of excitement and dread roiled inside her. Meeting with Brian and Mike could lead to something transformative. Or it could simply mean facing the echo of their struggles head-on. Where had they all strayed as friends? Were they still even friends? At the park, green grass stretched wide under the open sky. Brian arrived first, pulling a picnic blanket from his bag. As he laid it down, his heart thudded with a rhythm that mirrored the excitement of kids scampering nearby. Soon, Sarah arrived, her presence lighting up the dim corners of his anxiety. And moments later, Mike ambled up, swinging his baseball cap in his hand. The three of them stood together, a triangle of shared stories and burdens. "Hey, thanks for coming," Brian said, trying to keep the weight of his feelings at bay for just a while longer. Sarah smiled nervously. "I think we all need each other right now more than ever." "Yeah," Mike added, his eyes locking on theirs. "Let us talk about how we can take action. We can create something good." But as they settled down, ready to share thoughts and ideas, Brian couldn't help but wonder, was it just the start of a collaboration or a reckoning? Could they navigate their pain without losing each other in the process? The questions hung in the air, heavy but unspoken, waiting for the right moment to crash down. As they began to share their dreams and fears, a storm brewed on the horizon, one they didn't see coming. Would their determination lead them to salvation, or would it unravel their very connection? The sun climbed higher, illuminating the park with its warm embrace. Birds chirped freely, and the laughter of children filled the air like music. Yet, despite the cheerful atmosphere, a weight pressed upon Brian, Sarah, and Mike. The picnic blanket, once a symbol of comfort, now felt like a thin veil over their insecurities. Brian took a deep breath, breaking the tense silence. "So, here we are. What do you think? Can we really make a difference?" Mike leaned forward, his eyes shining with determination. "I believe we can. This community needs us. We've faced battles before, this is just a different kind of fight." Sarah nodded, but doubt lingered. "It's not just about gathering ideas. We need to actually impact lives. What if we fail?" Brian could feel her uncertainty cutting through the afternoon glow. "Failure, it's a part of trying. Look at us. We wouldn't be here if we didn't care about each other. That has to count for something." Sarah's expression softened. "You're right. Maybe it's more about the effort than the end result." As they shared their thoughts, a flicker of hope ignited in the air around them. They began brainstorming ways to raise awareness and gather resources for those affected by the burglaries. Ideas bounced back and forth like an invigorating game of catch, the initial friction fading into shared excitement, but just as their energy surged, a dark cloud rolled across Brian's mind. What if someone gets hurt during this? What if it spirals out of control? The air became thick with unspoken fears, and for a moment, the laughter around them faded. Mike's expression went solemn. "That's a reality we have to prepare for. We can't ignore it. We have to find a way to protect our friends and the community." Brian felt a chill, as if a sudden draft had swept through the park. The past memories of his own mistakes tinged his stomach with dread. "What I've done before. I don't want to drag you two into my insecurities." "Brian," Sarah said softly, reaching for his arm. "We're here because we want to be. The past doesn't define us now. It's what we choose to do next that matters." The warmth of her words curled around him like a safety net, but shadows still flicked at the corners of his mind. Then Mike spoke, his gaze steady as he lifted his chin. "Let us lead by example. Put on a workshop, engage the kids. We can show them they're not alone." Before Brian could respond, a sudden voice sliced through the moment, an urgent shout that made them all turn. A group of teenagers in the distance were laughing, but their laughter quickly turned to shouts of alarm. As they ran, others followed, some pulling out phones and staring wide-eyed. "What is going on?" Sarah jumped to her feet, scanning the scene. Brian's heart raced as he caught a glimpse of chaos, a confrontation flaring up, anger erupting in violent motions. His instincts kicked in, and without thinking, he started toward the commotion. "No!" Sarah shouted, panic threading through her tone. "Brian, wait!" But the fear didn't stop him. A surge of adrenaline propelled him forward as he pushed past onlookers. What was happening? How could they help? Just then, everything exploded in his mind, a whirlwind of thoughts colliding, and he was lost in the urgency of the unfolding moment. Brian turned back for just a split second, locking eyes with Sarah and Mike. In that brief exchange, he saw their fear mirrored in their expressions, but also a shared sense of purpose. Whatever this was, they would face it together. As he approached the chaos, a decision solidified in Brian's heart. They were going to take action no matter the consequences. In that very instant, everything he had bottled up surged to the surface. This was the reckoning they hadn't anticipated. Did their intentions to help the community still matter in the face of real danger? The world around him blurred, and he stepped into the fray, heart pounding with fear and resolve. What lay ahead would test them like never before. Would they emerge stronger, or would the storm swallow them whole? Brian pushed through the crowd, each step fueled by a mix of dread and determination. The air crackled with tension as shouts rose louder, slicing through the warm, once peaceful afternoon. It was a chaotic scene. Teenagers circled a focal point, breathing heavily as confrontational figures squared off. "Get back!" someone yelled, and Brian flinched at the violence beneath the voice. He glanced over his shoulder, catching a glimpse of Sarah's worried face, eyes wide like saucers. Mike stood beside her, fists clenched, an expression of resolve etched onto his features. Despite the noise surrounding him, the bond among them pulsed with an intensity that drew him further into the fray. "Come on, we have to do something." Mike's voice pierced through the chaos, reaching out to Brian as if grounding him. The three were tethered in that shared urgency, hearts racing as the world spun away into shadows. With one final push, Brian broke through to the inner circle, where two boys were squared off, faces flushed, breaths ragged. He could feel the anger radiating off them like heat waves, twisting his stomach into knots. "Hey! Stop!" Brian shouted, his voice barely slicing through the mass of yelling. The boys turned, momentarily stunned. It was the opening he needed. "Let us not do this," he said, stepping closer, palms out and defenses lowered. "This isn't the answer." One boy, a lean figure with a scowl, stared daggers. "You don't know anything. Just back off." "Maybe not," Brian replied, forcing a calmness into his voice. "But I know things can get worse. Think about what happens tomorrow, how this will affect you and your friends. Is this really how you want to be remembered?" For a moment, it felt like time had stalled. The tension hung thick in the air, and the eyes of the other teens flickered between the boys and Brian, uncertain. "Don't throw your lives away," Brian pleaded, channeling every ounce of compassion he could muster. "We can work together. Let us find another way to handle this." The lean boy's anger faltered. Confusion replaced the fire in his eyes as he glanced at his friend, whose fists were now slowly unclenching. Then, the hushed murmurs spread like wildfire through the crowd. Some began nodding, others shifted their feet as if readying to disperse. A glimmer of understanding flickered, a chance to redirect the storm brewing among them. Seeing the shift, Sarah pushed through and joined Brian. "What's happening right now? It doesn't have to be a fight. We care about this community. Let this be a moment of change instead." I wasn't going to back down," the lean boy stammered, the anger flipping like a switch. But doubt had already bubbled to the surface. "I thought, maybe I had no choice." "Choice is what we're offering. You have the power to choose a better path," Mike interjected, stepping in beside Brian and Sarah. "A fight won't bring change. Work with us, let us build something, together." Brian felt the collective energy shifting, hope weaving through the air. Those who had originally come for a spectacle were now absorbing the genuine plea for peace. Would they take a step back from the brink, or would this continue spiraling? In that moment, a flash of movement caught his eye, a figure lurking at the edge of the crowd. A flicker of recognition shot through him. "Watch out!" Brian shouted, but it was too late. The confrontation escalated with a fist flying through the air, connecting with a jaw that echoed like thunderclap. Gasps erupted around him, and Brian's heart sank. As the crowd surged forward in shock, Brian's stomach dropped. This was spiraling out of control again. He glanced at Sarah and Mike, their expressions now riddled with concern. Could they salvage this? Would their outstretched hands be enough to grab the community back from the edge? With adrenaline flooding his veins, Brian felt the heat of determination blaze within him once more. He had to act. But as he stepped forward into the chaos, he couldn't shake the question ringing in his mind: would they really find a way to unite in the face of violence, or was it already too late? Brian reacted instinctively, pushing further into the chaos. Bodies shifted around him, creating a wave of uncertainty as the brutal punch reverberated through the air. The crowd gasped collectively, a sound that echoed his own mounting fear. He couldn't let this spiral into something worse. Stop. Everyone just stop. He yelled. Panic swelled in his chest, threatening to choke him. The words coursed through him, and he clamped down on the fear, hoping they'd carry the weight of truth. The boy who had thrown the punch, a stocky figure now breathing heavily, stood frozen. His eyes darted around, seeking approval or perhaps validation for the violence he had just unleashed. "Look at what you've done!" Brian shouted. He stepped forward, placing himself directly between the combatants, his heart racing. "This isn't worth it. Think about what this fight really means for you." The shock of his words hung in the air. He could see the cracks forming in the boy's composure. "You don't understand." He barked back, but his voice lacked conviction. "This is all I have." "Is it?" Brian countered, determination sharpening his resolve. "You think resorting to fists will make things better? This isn't just about ego. You're better than this." Brian saw a flicker of vulnerability in the boy's eyes, a small chink in the armor. Around them, the crowd shifted, their murmurs intensifying. Brian took in a deep breath, sensing the moment stretching like a fragile thread. "Let's talk this out," Sarah chimed in, her voice steady and calm, slicing through the tension. "You're not alone in this. We all care. We can find a solution better than fighting." Mike stepped beside Brian, his posture relaxed but assertive. "You have your friends. You have a community, even if it doesn't feel that way right now. Let's build something new together." The boy opened and closed his fists, caught in the struggle between pride and doubt. The crowd watched, each person silently hoping for a resolution. Brian's heart raced as he locked eyes with the lean boy, seeing the conflict unfold. "This isn't the way to fix things. You know it, deep down," Brian pressed. "Tell us what's really bothering you." A brief silence fell over the group, thick and heavy, until the boy finally spoke, voice low. "They'll think I'm weak if I walk away. Or they'll see you as a leader," Mike replied, his voice steady. "A leader chooses courage over anger. Is that the legacy you want to leave? A memory of fists, or of friendship?" For a fleeting moment, hope flickered in the lean boy's eyes. A small contingent of nearby teens nodded, murmurs of agreement rippling through the crowd. "Just think," Sarah urged gently. "This can be a moment where you show others that strength isn't just about fighting. You can inspire them." The tension in the air seemed to lift slightly. The crowd held its breath, waiting, a collective heart beating as one. Brian could feel the sweat beading on his forehead, the weight of their hopes pressing on him, but he wouldn't back down. "Do you really want to go down that road?" he asked again. The boy hesitated, breath coming quicker, and Brian recognized a glimmer of clarity breaking through the fog of anger. Then, just as it seemed the moment of transformation was within reach, another shout pierced the air. The figure lurking on the edges of the crowd broke free, moving toward them with intent. "Hey! What's happening?" The voice cut through the hopeful air like a knife, and Brian's stomach dropped. Was this about to escalate once more? Would the moment of unity slip through their fingers? With their fate swirling around them in that charged atmosphere, Brian realized this was truly a turning point. What would happen next would determine their paths forever. As the newcomer approached, the crowd shifted uneasily, their eyes darting back and forth like a pinball machine. Brian's heart thudded in his chest, a pulsing reminder of the fragile hope they had been building just moments before. The figure advancing toward them was taller, broad shoulders squared off, exuding an authoritative presence. It was the school's captain of the football team, Jake, known for his toughness and a short temper. The air was thick with tension, his face hard as he wrestled with curiosity and impatience. "Cut it out!" Jake shouted. "What's with all this nonsense? Are you seriously letting one little scrap turn into a group therapy session?" Brian felt the boy beside him stiffen, a visible surge of anger igniting at Jake's scornful depth. Was this what they needed right now, a challenge to their fragile peace? "Jake, wait!" Brian yelled, raising his hands to block the incoming storm. "This isn't what you think. We're trying to help him." "Help? By coddling? That's not how you handle respect," Jake snapped, taking a step closer. The crowd shifted again, whispers mixing with the tension. Brian stood his ground, weighing his options. The dread of a setback loomed over him, but he couldn't let fear dictate his actions. "You know that fighting isn't the way." "Maybe it's not, but showing weakness won't earn any respect," Jake challenged, his eyes narrowing. "You really think being a pushover makes you a hero?" Suddenly, Brian found himself contemplating a new angle. Was Jake really just a bully, or was he desperately trying to fit into a mold he felt trapped by? What if it's the opposite? He shot back, desperation pulling him forward. What if giving in to anger is truly showing weakness? He has a chance to be better, to inspire. The boy Brian had defended glanced uncertainly at Jake, searching for a thread of understanding. "Look," the lean boy spoke, voice trembling, still stripped of bravado. "I don't want to be that guy you think I am. But it's hard. I thought that's what you all wanted." A beat of silence hung between them. Brian sensed a collective inhale from the crowd, their breaths mingling like an electric cord striking against the tension that couldn't decide which way to break. "You're stronger than you think when you walk away from a fight," Sarah chimed in, her eyes locking with the boy's. "Show them you can be better. With us." Defiance flickered in the boy's posture as he shifted his weight. Brian saw the wheels turning, the pieces of the puzzle slowly settling into place, Jake's face contorted with frustration, his tough guy act slipping as uncertainty crept in. He opened his mouth to retort but paused, the hesitance becoming palpable. The crowd continued to watch, hungry for resolution yet terrified of rejection. Maybe being a leader is about knowing when to fight and when to stand down," he conceded at last, voice quieter, a hint of vulnerability leaking through. "But what about the others, my friends? They think I'm supposed to be tough." "Real toughness is inspiring your friends to think differently," Mike encouraged, stepping up beside Brian. "It starts here. Right now. Choose to be a role model instead of a punching bag." The boy took a breath, his expression shifting through several shades: confusion, hope, and finally, understanding. The weight of decisions lay heavy in the air. Brian felt the connection tightening, life held momentarily in balance, but before anyone could commit to this fragile unity, Jake's phone buzzed loudly in his pocket, an alarming contrast to the peace they sought. He fished it out, face pale as he read the message. "What the? No way. What's wrong?" Brian asked, anxiety mounting. Jake shook his head, panic cascading across his features. "We need to get out of here. Someone spotted us. This is bad." Pulsing dread rippled through the crowd at the words. Brian sensed unity crumbling, hope evaporating at the same moment it had begun to blossom. What revelation was now surfacing? As the group erupted into voices of alarm, hearts racing against the ticking clock, they faced an uncertain future. Would this fracture their growing bond or forge an unbreakable alliance in the face of fear? Chaos erupted. The crowd fueled by fear surged, bodies pressing against one another as panic snaked through the group. Brian could feel it, an electric current of anxiety that left them all breathless. He glanced at the boy he had stood up for, worry etching deeper lines across his brow. "Stay calm," Brian shouted, his voice barely cutting through the swirl of voices. "We need to think." Jake's expression was a storm, his usual bravado gone. "If we don't act fast, it'll only get worse. We need to split up, go separate ways. Otherwise, they'll see us all." The boy beside Brian blinked, confusion still gripping him. Who spotted us?" Brian felt his heart race. It might be the wrong people, the ones who had started all this trouble in the first place. "We can't let them divide us," he called out. "We have to stick together." But Jake was already in motion, waving the others towards a side street. "I'm not waiting around for a fight. It's every man for himself." A wave of murmurs cascaded through those standing nearby, their unity starting to fracture as fear seeped in. Some leapt to follow Jake, trusting his undeniable energy, while others hovered in uncertain loyalty to Brian. "Wait!" Brian interrupted, his voice rising. "We can't just run. If someone is out there looking for us, we can't give them what they want." But only a handful remained clustered, and even they looked unsure. Fear had become the monster they all grappled with. Sarah's hand caught Brian's wrist, grounding him. "What do we do then, Brian? We can't stay here, it's too risky." The boy they had been defending stepped up, a newfound resolve in his expression. "If we want to prove we're different, we have to show courage. We can find a place to regroup, figure this out together." Brian felt a swell of pride rising for the boy. Building on that confidence felt almost magical. "We'll find an abandoned car lot nearby. It'll give us cover and a chance to plan our next move." Jake was still rallying his crew to scatter, but now a shadow of doubt crossed his features. Maybe he sensed it too, the strength in sticking together, a undeniable pull toward solidarity. "Fine. We'll regroup, but this better work," Jake snapped, glancing back at Brian. There was a flicker of an unspoken challenge between them, as if Jake was testing the limits of Brian's leadership. "Let us go," Brian shouted, urgency cutting through the tension. The group shifted towards the direction he had indicated, a reluctant unity forming as people fell into step beside one another. They moved cautiously, hearts pounding with every whispered rumor of who might be lurking in the shadows. Shadows played tricks in the unsettling twilight, echoing their racing thoughts. As they approached the car lot, the silence felt thick, as if the world held its breath. Brian focused on that last moment of peace, the understanding that, for once, they were moving towards something better. But even as they sped up, a jarring noise broke the calm. A distant shout rang out, full of rage and desperation, shaking the fragile strength they had built. "Brian!" Sarah gasped, her wide eyes reflecting fear. "What if he finds us?" He needed to make a decision, it pressed against him now more than ever. "We can't let fear win." "Not this time," he urged, voice steadying, but in that moment, Brian felt the weight of their choice hanging in the air. They needed clarity, and they needed it fast. And just as they reached the entrance of the lot, another text dinged on Jake's phone. The anxiety flooded back, the hidden truth ready to unfold. Who was really after them, and why now? What would they do when the truth emerged? The twilight deepened around them, wrapping the small group in uncertainty as they finally entered the abandoned car lot. The rusted vehicles leaned awkwardly, remnants of a time that felt just as lost as they were. In the stillness, Brian felt the weight of their collective anxiety pressing down. They were scared, but this time it was different. They were on the brink of a transformation, and he could sense it. "All right," Brian said, focusing everyone's attention. "We can't let this fear tear us apart. We need to come together, keep our heads level." Sarah nodded in agreement, her determination shining through her earlier panic. A nervous chatter rippled through the group, and Brian took a step forward, his heart racing. "Listen, a fight is only part of it, right? We have fights every day. Those fights that shape us aren't just in the schoolyard or the streets. We've been fighting against our doubts, our struggles. But maybe we can fight for something better. The lean boy stepped forward, his resolve flickering beneath the weight of the moment. I didn't want to start anything today, but he took a deep breath, meeting Brian's gaze. You're right. I've let anger guide me when I should have stood with friends instead. Brian could see it in the boy's eyes, a clear shift from conflict to cooperation. We've all got burdens, Mike added, stepping beside the boy, their camaraderie unmistakable. It's easy to get lost in them. But holding on to each other, that's what brings us back. From the periphery, more voices joined in. This wasn't just about their small circle anymore. Others began to share their fears, their stories, and soon words of support flowed into the cracks of their worries like sunlight breaking through clouds. It was a collective realization: they could turn their pain into purpose. Outside the lot, the world was still filled with uncertainty, but here, among friends, they forged a fragile safety, one built of honesty and understanding. Brian took a deep breath, feeling a glimmer of hope spark inside him. We need to come up with a plan, he urged, speaking to both the old tensions and the bright possibilities. Let us take a stand against this fear, not just for ourselves, but for everyone in this community. Like a community watch? Sarah suggested, enthusiasm radiating from her. We can help each other, protect each other. Keep those we care about safe. Yes. Brian exclaimed, the energy in the lot buzzing with a newfound mission. We could even set up a support circle, workshops for the younger kids, teach them how to handle conflicts without violence. Show them that vulnerability doesn't mean weakness. The lean boy nodded, emboldened. I can help with that. I have friends who would support this. They just need a reason to stand up. We can be the change together. As ideas bubbled forth, forging a plan amidst their chaos, Jake's phone buzzed again, drawing all attention like a sudden flash of light. Silence fell, the weight of anticipation swelling in the air. His face went pale as he scanned the message, the tension palpable. What's wrong? Brian pressed, sensing the shift immediately. Jake hesitated, but the tone was serious. It's them. They've showed up near the park. They're hunting for us. We need to move. The collective understanding descended like a heavy blanket. Fear danced at the edges again, but a flicker of unity countered it. We can't just run blindly, Brian said, his voice edging toward steely resolve. We need to prepare and do this together. We have each other's backs, right? The group nodded, and in that moment, commitment replaced uncertainty. They were more than scared kids now, they were a force, a community ready to fight against whatever shadows loomed. As they stepped towards the exit of the lot, coming together as one, Brian looked back at the rusting car shells. Each car told a story, just like they all did. They were broken, but they could also be restored. And as they emerged from that lot, Brian felt the warmth of hope pulse through him. They were no longer just victims of their circumstances, they were architects of a future they could shape. Together, they would stand tall against fear and build a bridge toward a better tomorrow. Months later, the once desolate streets of the town buzzed with life again. The Community Watch program was thriving, their support circles ignited with laughter, learning, and connection. Brian had found a stable job. Sarah was on her way to college, balancing both family and ambition, while Mike became a mentor, guiding others who fought their own battles. As they gathered at the park, they renewed friendships, not just as a group that once stood on the edge of chaos but as a family who fought through darkness together. Remember, Brian said, a smile breaking across his face. We are stronger together. And for the first time in a long time, the air was filled with laughter, their hearts light and free. They had turned their pain into purpose, creating a legacy of courage, healing, and hope. Change, born from the ashes of despair, shimmered in the sunlight. They had transcended their struggles, woven into each other's lives without shame or remorse, simply bold enough to say, we can be better. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and encourage more uplifting transformations. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending. Your words matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation, because you never know who's waiting for their moment to rise. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second.